what are you doing these days as a non-Laker?
A little bit of everything. I'm kind of slowing down a bit now. Like over the years, I've done a lot of things involved with construction, from cabinetry to furniture to building renovations and different things like that. At this point, I've slowed a lot of that down and just doing a little bit, a few things on the side, small projects now.
How in the world did you ever get involved in construction work?
You know, I've always enjoyed building things and making things and working with my hands, and maybe growing up on the farm had something to do with that. But I met a few guys and started working with them and enjoyed it, and it just kept going. And then, you know, next thing you know, 30 years goes by.
Yeah, and look at some of the wonderful things that you have helped to construct as well. Wouldn't you agree?
It is a nice feeling to see some of the things and you know you had a hand in building it.
And of course, that when you talk about a hand in winning, that also lends to you with your days with the Lakers. I mean, let's talk about that. You went from playing with Michael Jordan to Magic Johnson. That was really a treat for you, wasn't it?
You know, I was really fortunate to have been able to spend time with people like Michael and Magic, extraordinary people in so many ways. And I was really fortunate. I mean, I had very small parts in that. I mean, those guys carried everything on their shoulders, you know, with some teammates and that. But I certainly was very fortunate to be around and see what drove them, what kind of people they were. So I think about that often.
Because they had the same qualities in each of them that made them the superstars that they were, didn't they?
Yes, certainly very similar. And so much of that is, you know, it's hard to say, are you born with it or can you develop it? But I think some of it they're born with, you know, and they're definitely special individuals to be able to reach the heights that they have. And you know, and I look at, you know, spent probably more time with the Lakers, of course, and the thing that really gets me is how good of a person I believe Magic, you know, and Kareem and all the guys, not only great athletes, but I really think they're great people.
Yes, and when you talk about Magic and Kareem, you had to practice against Kareem every day, didn't you? That was not an easy task.
No, and you know, at that point, I mean, he'd already been in the league 20 years. And, you know, someone like myself coming in would probably like a flea bothering him at that point, you know. So you had to, I guess, just try to give him enough resistance to, like, I mean, there's no way you're going to ever stop him. So you don't want to try to be a nuisance. You just got to sort of provide enough resistance to keep him in shape and keep him sharp so that he can do what he needed to do, you know. But it certainly was a treat getting to know him.
Were there some days when you went to practice to Kareem and you said, "Oh my goodness, big fella's in a bad mood today. This could be a very difficult practice session for me."
Definitely, but you know, you learn to read things, and you learn to. You know, there'd be days he'd come in and he'd be joking and laughing, and you knew you could do a little more. And then there was days where he'd be quiet, and you just knew that you didn't want to poke him. You know, I think everybody had just a little bit of. I get a respectful fear of him, you know, and I look at, you know, I think when I got there, I was in my 20s and he was close to 40. I look at what he had seen and been through in his life already. And so you couldn't blame him sometimes for maybe, you know, having some days where, you know, 20 years in the league where everybody's coming at him every single day and everybody, you know, wants his picture, his autograph, everything. So, very understandable.
Were there days, Mike, when Coach would come to you and say, "Hey, listen, Mike, I want you to push him a little bit today. I want you to get under his skin just a little bit today because we need to work on some things with him"?
No, I can't say that there was ever any times that that Coach would say that. I think Kareem he knew, it was understanding. He knew what he needed to do to keep himself ready to do his job, and that would sort of dictate. You know, like there would be times where, you know, running down the floor, and here he's almost 40, and it was hard. If he really wanted to run, you still almost couldn't keep up with him. He could still run the floor when he wanted to, and so he kind of governed that himself to keep himself in the condition that he needed to.
And I would imagine you have some other really good Kareem stories that only you can tell because of the closeness that you had with him.
Yeah, probably, yeah. You know, I really admire him. I don't think a week goes by, and I'm saying this with all honesty, not a week goes by in my life where I don't think of the team like Magic and Kareem and some of the other guys, and think about what they've meant to me, and how they've affected my life and sort of shaped it in a lot of ways. So there's probably some funny stories that I can tell. I know if we have time, I can tell one quick short one. My very first day with the Lakers, we were flying somewhere, and I was sitting next to Kareem. He had fallen asleep, and the stewardesses put the food down, our trays down. I ate mine, and he was still sleeping. And then when they came to pick them up, they took them both away. Well, then when Kareem woke up, he just looked at me and said, "You ate my food." I didn't even know him yet at this point. So I'm like, no, I didn't touch your food. You know, I didn't know if he didn't know me. And, you know, so I always thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. And the relationship went downhill after that, huh? It's really amazing because you were with so many great players with the Lakers. And I'm wondering how you felt being around all of those future Hall of Famers, all-stars, and then here you were with them for just a couple of years.
Yeah, in all honesty, I was always well aware of how much better they were than I was as a basketball player, you know, and realizing that whatever small part my job was, I was there to do that, and probably realizing that probably a lot of guys could do the same thing. So I was very fortunate to be there. But it was, you know, in a lot of ways it was difficult because they were so much better. And everybody wants to be a great player when you're there. But you know that you're never, you know, I would never be Kareem, no matter what. I would never be that good. And so you're always kind of aware of that. And it's, you know, it's a little bit hard in some ways, you know, but yeah, there was being around so many great players. And I didn't really have the basketball background that a lot of these players had growing up, you know, and so I didn't understand at that point probably things the way they understood them with the game and the rivalries and the all of it really.
Was there a lot of teasing among teammates on those teams with all of those superstars?
Yeah, you know, there was a pretty close group of guys, and you're with each other a lot, so there would be quite a bit of joking around, and it was a lot of fun. It was really a good atmosphere, really a great group of guys. You know, maybe a lot of people don't see that or know it, because they often, I know I get often asked, you know, what were they really like? And I would say someone like Magic, I say, well, what you see, you know, that's Magic. That's what he is. You know, he's not putting on any, what he is what you see there. And, you know, again, if I can repeat myself, just the bottom line was they were really, really good people, you know.
And that really was the foundation for all of the success that you had with them, because they were great players with good people.
Yes. Yeah. And that's true. Because I don't think there was other teams that had been on that had great players as well, but didn't have the same success or didn't have the same. But these guys were special. They really were. You know, still are.
Yeah, and there's one other thing, Mike. They were all behind you on game day because they knew when you came in, you were the crowd favorite, and I could see them cheering for you more so than they would cheer for each other. You remember how they loved to have you when you were going into the games?
You know, I guess in hindsight, they look at it and say they treated me pretty well. Again, I think always in your mind, there's something saying that you really don't deserve to, you really don't deserve the kind of the accolades or whatever, or because, you know, I know who was winning the games. I know who was, you know, putting the points on the board. And I know, you know, so there was always that little bit, but I certainly always appreciated they always did treat me very well, the players, fans, everybody. And I certainly appreciate that.
I know you appreciate that, but how did you feel knowing that you were a fan favorite of the Lakers that had all these Hall of Famers on them?
Well, you know, quite honestly, I don't know that I did realize I was you know, I probably didn't really think about that much at that point, you know. You weren't here very long, but Ward, you hit the jackpot. You were here in '86 and '87, and you took 2 championship rings with you. You knew exactly when you came and what you were going to do. Yeah, you know, I was really very, very fortunate to have been with that group over that period of time. It's certainly something that I'll always treasure. There's always a part of you that wishes that you could have been a bigger part, you know. But yeah, I guess over the course of time, you come with terms of you did the best. Like I know I did the best I could with what I had at the time, and I have to live with that. And because everybody would like to have been, you know, a bigger contributor. But I certainly really, there's often times where I think, you know, I love the championships rings, but I'm fortunate to have 2. But if I could, I would give one up to another player to have a year, like say someone like Patrick Ewing or Charles Oakley, who maybe they deserve a ring. I would, if I could, I would switch and have 1 year that they've had for my own satisfaction and trade them for the 1 championship, you know, if you understand what I'm saying, you know?
Yeah, that's a very noble thing to say, but not that many players would actually do it or even feel that way.
Well, I would, because, you know, I have so much respect. In particular, I used to always think, I remember we'd play Patrick Ewing, and he put every bit of his heart and soul on that floor every single time he was there. I don't like, and in Charles Oakley and guys like that, they, you know, I mean, there's a lot of players that worked hard, but I'm taking those 2 guys that they stand out. I honestly would, if I could, I would trade one to have one of their great years for my own satisfaction of knowing that I, you know, had a good year, and I would give up and give them one of the championship, you know, because they deserve it. You know, I was lucky to be in that situation. I mean, they deserved it. You know, they deserved. They worked so hard, and were such great players for so long.
You know, Mike, that's one of the reasons why you were a fan favorite, because you were a team player, and the fans at the forum could see that, they realized that, so that when you came in, they wanted to make you feel so good. That's why they cheered so hard for you, because they knew you wanted to give back to the team. You were a team player first.
Well, thank you, Jim. That means a lot now, you know, at this stage of life. That means a lot to have you say that. Thank you.
And you're in the history books. The first Canadian player to ever win an NBA championship. You're in the history books forever, partner. No one can ever beat you.
Yeah, there's something there, I suppose, right? Yeah.
How does it feel knowing you have that distinction?
It's very nice. I feel fortunate. I'm grateful. But I still struggle a little bit with the, I guess I realize that I wasn't a great player, you know, so part of me always feels that in some way I don't deserve, like even if someone from my local area here comes up and kind of, oh, NBA star, in my head I'm thinking, I was not a star. You know, I did what I could, and I don't like, almost like you don't like being heralded for more than what you did in a way, you know. I mean, so there's always that part of me that thinks that, as much as I'm grateful and I love the championships and that, but there's always that little part of maybe dissatisfaction in my own self, you know. In fact, for many, many years, and even right now, I don't display any of my things. And my kids, when they were growing up, probably didn't even know until they got into school and their friends told them that I had played in the NBA, you know.
Did your kids ever bring that up to you about that? Why didn't you tell them?
No, they never really asked why. I think that's just the way it was growing up, you know, and they each found their own sports. And so we really didn't talk much about it until now that they're a bit older. You know, I tell them a little bit more about it, and we can talk because they're into sports themselves, so they can understand some things. You know.
Mike, where did this humbleness come from you that you have? I mean, you're so team oriented first, and I'm thinking maybe it's your background, because playing with that group, you couldn't be humble with those guys. You had to be out there, but you were so humble and giving to everybody else.
I suppose, you know, thank our parents for, I guess, instilling certain values, and maybe it's just where I grew up. I don't know. It's something I guess I don't really think of it that way of myself, because I just feel that's the way I am, and that's the way that I should be. So I don't really look at it as any kind of a special trait or anything that I'm doing that's I'm not trying to do anything different like that. It's just the way it is, you know. I guess maybe that's the way, you know, my parents always raised me. We always treated everyone well, respected everybody, and we weren't better than anybody. You know?
Yeah, Mike, what did you take from the Lakers that helped you to be a very successful school teacher, to impart great knowledge and wisdom upon our young people?
That is probably one of the biggest things is the discipline, the mental focus, and what it takes to achieve something great. That probably one of the biggest things that I could probably use in terms of when I was trying to, you know, teach some of the young people. I would think all the time about the days with Magic and Kareem and James and Byron and Michael and AC and all those guys, and I really learned from them what it took and from Coach Pat Riley. You know, hard working and didn't leave anything to chance. Everything was taken care of and looked after. So you learned what it took to do something really great and to do something right and properly. And I tried to put that into everything else that I do after. And I would try to instill that in the students in a way, without you didn't always talk about it in terms from basketball, but just in terms of how they're going to live their lives. You know?
Yeah, talking about giving them great life lessons in the classroom through athletics.
Yes, yes, exactly. You know, the discipline. I think that's one of the big things we took from the Lakers. The practices, the hardest practices I think anybody could ever go through. But the discipline, even coming into training camp, you did not want to come in out of shape and take the first month to get in shape. You had to come in mid-season form right away, because they want to get a jump, get a 10-game lead on everybody right away. So the discipline and from Kareem, the mental focus, you know, when he was needed, you know, Coach Riley could just look at him and say, "Cap, we need you." And you almost just see, suddenly he would be laser focused, and he'd go out and, you know, everybody in the stands knew he was going to take a hook shot. Everybody on the floor knew he was taking a hook shot, but yet he still went out and hit 4 or 5 in a row. And next thing you know, we'd be on his back, we'd win the game. So that mental ability and that focus was something you don't forget.
And when you think about it, you had the best seat in the house.
I sure did. I sure did. Yeah, that's for sure.
When you talk to your young kids, and you talk about your days with the Lakers, as you just alluded to a couple of moments ago, are they in awe of what their father accomplished as a basketball player? Because the Lakers are known not only in the United States, but really all over the world.
I think they've come into an understanding where they're proud of what I did and where I'd been, and particularly I think because they know me as the person and kind of where I came from. And you know, I mean, I started playing basketball at 16 years old. I was a farmer in a field. I didn't know anything about basketball or anything. And in, you know, within 4 years, I'm in the NBA kind of thing. So I think they can appreciate sort of what it took. And so I think they're proud of that, and even though they know I wasn't like a superstar or a franchise player or anything remotely like that, I was a role player. I think they can appreciate where I came from and what it was to make it to that point. So I think they're proud of that as opposed to being in awe, really.
And it also taught you and you taught them about the lessons, the life lessons that you learned in athletics with the Lakers that have helped you to become the great parent that you are today, and they appreciate that.
They do, especially as they get older. When they're young, they don't always understand why you're having them do certain things or trying to have them understand certain things. But as they got older and as they went through, well, my son, he's finished his tennis career now, but he's certainly got a great understanding of a lot of the things that I was trying to instill in him as he was younger. He has a good understanding of them as he went through. And my daughter's feeling that now. She's understanding that, and it's helping her out now.
Yeah, Mike, isn't it amazing what athletics can do for us as a society in helping us to, do better, strive to do better, work harder to get better, and things of that nature?
Without a doubt. It's so important. And I think when things were shut down through this pandemic, I think we even more realized the importance. It's so much more than entertainment. It's the human soul driving. Like why do we try to do these things, or why do we admire when people do it? And it says so much about us as humans, and it's so important. It really does. And I think through sports, a lot of people who may not have a chance to come together can, and find appreciation for each other, respect for each other, common ground. All those things come from sport, and I think there's just so much from putting yourself out there, trying, failing, picking yourself up, you keep going, accepting yourself. You learn about yourself, that's for sure. So yeah, there's so much of that, Jim.
And there's a saying, once a Laker, always a Laker. Is that true with you?
I certainly hope so. It is with me, and I hope they feel the same,